Hello there. First of all, I wanted to do a little introduction on myself. I'm Camilla. I grew up on an ostrich farm in Essex. We've got three of my goats in the background, pygmy goats. We've got Daisy, Smarty and Toffee. And here in the foreground, we've got our large redneck female ostrich who required a lot of veterinary treatment, and I helped out with as a teenager, so spurred my love for all things veterinary. I graduated from Camilla Veterinary Ultrasound School in Copenhagen in Denmark in 2006, and since that I've worked in GP practices all over East Anglia. I've worked in a lot of emergency and critical care hospitals, particularly between 2009 and 2017, interspersed with a bit of locuming and a bit of GP work as well, day work as well. So a real mix in general practice, in small animal general practice, although I have done a bit of mixed practice as well. In 2018, I set up First Opinion Veterinary Ultrasound, primarily as a peripatetic ultrasonography service, basically helping other GP vets out with a service that was not quite referral level, but good GP ultrasonography, so providing that for a number of practices. And I also started reviewing ultrasound machines because lots of people came to me asking what ultrasound machine should I use. I was trying out lots of different ones at the time, and I realised that people didn't really know what machine they should get for their practice. So I started publishing those reviews on websites and gradually getting more and more offers of trying out different machines from different ultrasound distributors, different companies as well. So that side of things grew, and I was also teaching with IMV imaging on a locum basis on their corporate courses. So when the pandemic hit, I decided to launch my own online courses, which have taken off, and also started offering in practice teaching on people's own machines. So let's move on to what this webinar is all about. How to get the most out of your ultrasound machine, particularly highlighting your ultrasound machine, because I feel that we often believe that our ultrasound machine isn't the best. You know, it might be an older version, and that we worry we won't be able to get good information out of it. But I think what today is about getting the best out of what we've got, because we can definitely get information that is useful for our patients, even out of pretty old machines. So and they are out there, and that might be all you've got access to. So let's focus on what you can get out of your machine, rather than dreaming of the unobtainable machine that we haven't got at the moment. So with regards to this, I was thinking about what your current barriers are to ultrasound. I talk to a lot of students and talk about what might be holding them back with ultrasound, and these are some of the top things that came up. So time is a massive barrier. Look, we're all super busy, and we've all got many priorities in life. So it's about figuring out how to balance those priorities. Number two is your self-belief. So what we tell ourselves about what we can do with ultrasound, whether we berate ourselves or whether we big ourselves up, can make a real difference to how confident we feel about our skills. Third, your machine. So what I discussed, so about having an older machine or the preset's not being right, or whatever the excuse is, letting that hold us back and not let us get that information which might be useful for our patients. And number 4, training, whether that's access to training or time for training or ongoing support in training. So those type of things are definitely barriers to starting ultrasonography. So I think that those are the 4 things that we're going to talk about today in this webinar, and hopefully break down some of those barriers so that we can move forward and get the most out of our ultrasound machines. So let's move on to what this webinar is all about. How to get the most out of your ultrasound machine, particularly highlighting your ultrasound machine, because I feel that we often believe that our ultrasound machine isn't the best. You know, it might be an older version, and that we worry we won't be able to get good information out of it. But I think what today is about getting the best out of what we've got, because we can definitely get information that is useful for our patients, even out of pretty old machines. So and they are out there, and that might be all you've got access to. So let's focus on what you can get out of your machine, rather than dreaming of the unobtainable machine that we haven't got at the moment. So with regards to this, I was thinking about what your current barriers are to ultrasound. I talk to a lot of students and talk about what might be holding them back with ultrasound, and these are some of the top things that came up. So time is a massive barrier. We're all super busy, and we've all got many priorities in life. So it's about figuring out how to balance those priorities. Number 2 is your self-belief. So what we tell ourselves about what we can do with ultrasound, whether we berate ourselves or whether we big ourselves up, can make a real difference to how confident we feel about our skills. 3rd, your machine. So what I discussed, so about having an older machine, or the preset's not being right, or whatever the excuse is, letting that hold us back and not let us get that information which might be useful for our patients. And number 4, training, whether that's access to training or time for training or ongoing support in training. So those type of things are definitely barriers to starting ultrasonography. So I think that those are the 4 things that we're going to talk about today in this webinar, and hopefully break down some of those barriers so that we can move forward and get the most out of our ultrasound machines. So our first barrier is time. What is the problem? Let's define that. Well, time isn't flexible. You know, we're all given a set amount of time. We can't expand time in any way. We can't fit more things into a specific time. And we often feel pulled in multiple directions. We may have different responsibilities. So as well as being a vet, we might also be a parent or a carer for an elderly parent ourselves, or we may have volunteer work, we may have all sorts of other things going on in our lives, hobbies, that is pulling us in multiple different directions, and feeling like it requires different things of us. So we have lots of responsibilities, so those are things that we can't really say no to, that we have to maintain in our lives. And sometimes it can feel like we don't have choice over how we spend our time. So what can we do about this? We need to think about what the solutions might be. So when it comes to ultrasound scanning, and we're thinking about time, it's about making prioritizing ultrasound. So if we say yes to something, we are saying no to something else. So what things can you say no to make room to learn ultrasound? But we can also make it a bit easier on ourselves so that things happen more naturally, so we're not forcing it, and we're not having to use willpower all the time to keep us going. So, for example, making it easy to scan. So what I mean by that is keeping the ultrasound machine easily accessible. Think about where you currently have your ultrasound machine. Is it in a bag, hidden away at the back of the practice, and you have to move something else out to actually get it out? That's really going to be a barrier to you actually using it. So can you keep the ultrasound machine somewhere where you're likely to use it? Especially when you're learning or practicing, then prep is often a good room, even if the lighting is poor. The fact that you're going to use it is more important, and the fact that it'll be there and you'll see it and you'll think, oh, maybe I could just pop the scanner on while this patient's getting sorted out for other things. So making sure that the ultrasound machine is easily accessible is a key thing to getting in the habit of practicing. Secondly, try and create a habit of practice. So this is really sort of creating a small habit. So for example, if we put the ultrasound machine somewhere where it's easily accessible, where you're going to see it often, and you're going to have patients nearby that you can practice on, then create a small habit like turning the machine on. Not saying you have to do a scan that day, but if it's on, if you have a patient you could practice on, you don't have to wait for it to warm up, etc. And it only takes a moment to press that button to switch it on. So try to make a habit of, at the end of consults, before you start surgery, switch that machine on. Then any gaps between surgeries, you might be able to stick a probe on and just practice one skill with ultrasonography before moving on to something else. Number 3 top tip is to find a friend of the doggy kind, so a dog that you can reliably practice on, that will tolerate you practicing on. Not all dogs do, so it's good to find a superstar dog to practice on, and maybe even do some training with, so that they get to lie still, so eventually you might not even need a nurse to help hold, but finding a dog that will lie so you can practice is a really useful thing to find. And if you have a friend, so a colleague, another vet who's maybe learning ultrasound at the same time, or a nurse who's willing to hold for you, that would be super as well. So finding a friend, of the doggy kind, and then of the human kind, who will support you in this journey as well. Number 4 is scheduling time. So you need to schedule time for a dog, preferably a dog when you're learning, although obviously cats will be fine too. They're just less tolerant of laying down for longer periods of time. But yeah, a dog, either a staff pet or your own dog, or if you get permission to scan animals, for example, before they are being neutered. You need to schedule the machine so that you can use the machine, and you need to clear your diary. So that might mean that if you're in a supportive team, that you are able to clear a bit of the diary during the working day, or it might mean coming into work slightly earlier or staying slightly later so you can practice these things. And you need to make a commitment to yourself, so schedule in that time in your personal diary, and on the work diary if that's important, that other people need to know what you're doing at that time. So make that commitment. I know how it is in small animal practice. When we make these commitments, it is asking for the emergencies to come in, but if we can schedule it then on a regular basis, so for example every Wednesday lunchtime, whatever it is, then some of those times it will happen, and that's where the progress will be made. So moving on to your next big barrier is your self-belief. And the problem is what we tell ourselves. So for example, if you ever say to yourself, I'll never be good at, or I can't, these are permanent words, non-shifting words that we believe we are and we can't change from. So they are self-limiting beliefs. So for example, I'll never be good at ultrasound. I can't tell normal from pathological. I will miss something that another vet would see. So this is where we have comparisonitis, imposter syndrome, perfectionism, all playing in and hampering our ambitions and goals with regards to ultrasound. It may mean that we really refer all ultrasound cases onto colleagues, and we'd much rather take an x-ray rather than picking up that ultrasound probe, and we avoid it at all costs. But we really need to shift from this fixed mindset to a growth mindset so we can move and start learning and progressing with our skills. So how do we do that? Well, the solution really lies in, first of all, keeping it simple. So not comparing us to someone who can do a full abdominal scan, all the advanced bits, do the adrenals, etc., etc. We want to keep it really simple, know what our next steps are, and then just add on slowly. So that may be that we are doing an abdominal fast scan once a week, or scanning a specific organ once a week, to just improve on that. And we may be trying other things as well, but our focus is on improving one small area so that we can get better and better at that. And then that way we can really sort of see and measure our progress as well in that one area. Once we feel confident on that, we can build on the next area and the next one. Secondly, we want to observe when we're having these negative thoughts. That's the first thing to do with self-limiting beliefs, is observe your negative thoughts. So when you catch yourself saying in your head, so-and-so would do a better ultrasound than me, I'll wait till they're available, or my scanning skills are not worth charging for, or it's not fair on the patient to sedate for my scanning skills. Just pause, think about it, and think about how you might be able to reframe that, and think about what steps you could take to giving ultrasound scanning a go, because that's really what's going to move things forward. So observe and think about how you would react differently, or how you could react differently instead. That's your first step. My third tip is to just start scanning. So sometimes we put these barriers up and then we just we avoid scanning, or we avoid doing the next step. But just pick up that probe, put it on the animal, and just know that the more you do, the more your confidence will grow. So just start. So our third barrier is your machine. And the problem with this is that you might believe that it's not the most up-to-date machine. You're not sure what the buttons do or which ones are important. Don't worry about that, we're going to talk about that in a second. Or you're worried if you start to play with the machine, you might break it for the next person. So this is a really common thing, and I remember thinking this when I was first started out with ultrasonography, is what if I press a button and it changes something in the machine, and and then the people that are good at ultrasonography can't fix it, and then we've broken the machine. It's just not going to happen. Most of it will get reset as soon as you switch the machine off and back on again. So really don't worry about that. You're not going to break it for the next person. And please be reassured that you can have a play with the buttons, see what a button does, what effect it has on your image. I really want to encourage that playfulness, really pushing buttons to the limit so that you can really see what effect that has on your image, because then you'll know what the small, doing a small change how that will change what you are seeing on the screen. And it all looks too complicated. Well, there are a lot of buttons on an ultrasound machine, but I am here to tell you that to optimize your image, there are really only 5 buttons that are essential to learn first to optimize and make the biggest difference. So the solution, even with older machines, you can get useful information for your patients. So that's a really key thing to understand, that even on older machines, you can get to see adrenals, you can get to see pancreas. Absolutely, you can get this useful information for your patients. There are 5 key buttons to find on your machine that will allow you to optimize your image. So we're going to show you these. And if you can't find those buttons, I will help you. So send me an email with your make and model and a picture of the knobs on your screen, so the control panel. And if that control panel shows links to the screen at all, then show me that as well. But if you have any difficulty with those, send me your make and model, and I will help you out to find those 5 buttons. Let me know what button you can't find also. So what are those 5 key machine buttons? Well, the first one is called overall gain. Then we've got time gain compensation, 3 frequency, which sounds a little less daunting, we've all heard of that, depth, fine, and focal zone. So frequency and depth, we've kind of got a concept about what might be, but the others sound a bit out of context. We don't really have anything to compare that with. So let's have a look at what all these buttons do. So overall gain amplifies any returning echoes to the probe. So what we have is if we imagine the probe up here, and this is the sound being sent out. So we have a sound being sent out from the probe, which then hits something, reflects back to the probe, and that's how the information is put on the screen from that point. So if it's strongly reflected, then it will be a brighter dot on the screen. And if it's weakly reflected, then it will be a darker dot. So the overall gain amplifies all of these dots. So a weaker signal will become a little bit stronger, and a strong signal will become even stronger. So the effect we see on the screen is that it becomes brighter. So each pixel on the screen becomes brighter, or if we turn the overall gain the other way, it will become darker. So we want to adjust this at the beginning of our scan of the complete abdomen, and then we don't want to adjust it too much, because we want to compare how bright different organs are, so the echogenicity of different organs and how they compare to each other. So once we've set it at the beginning of our examination, we don't want to adjust it too much, because that will affect how bright we think different organs are in comparison to each other. Now this button might be called B, or gain, or as in this case, it says auto on it. And you can see it's a knob that I'm turning, and that is the case most of the time. So finding the overall gain button on various different machines. So here we've got the time gains compensation buttons. So it's very similar to gain in that we are amplifying the returning echoes, but we are doing this at specific depths. So just to show you how, so here just to highlight what happens when. So looking at frequency. So we all know that frequency is measured in hertz, and 1 hertz is equal to 1 wave per second. So I talked about that it improves frequency, so I'll demonstrate that here. So here we've got the probe. However, if we've got high frequency, so what we've done is we've changed the frequency. So there is a huge interplay here between frequency and depth that we need to talk about. So a high frequency will give great axial resolution, but will lose energy really quickly. So we don't manage to penetrate deep into the tissue. A low frequency, however, gives less good axial resolution, but keeps more energy. It's essentially travelled less far, and so can penetrate deeper into the tissue. So a golden rule is that we always need to adjust our depth so that the organ of interest takes up about 2/3 to 3/4 of the screen, and then set the frequency for the highest possible for this depth of image. And that's going to be something that we need to adjust on site. It's not something we can say, oh, at 3 centimeters you need this frequency. You need to really be looking at your image and adjusting and trying it out. So here we have frequency. So with depth, we talked about that that we always want to adjust the depth so that the organ of interest takes up 3/4 to 2/3 of the screen. So depth is essentially how far into the patient. So here we've got, so depth is a little bit like Goldilocks. So moving on to our 5th button, which is the focal zone. So this is a little bit of a harder button to sort of grasp the context. So we talked about spatial resolution when we were talking about. So let's have a think about lateral resolution in the focal zone. So we've got our probe here. We can see there's a thickness to the beam here, and we can see the focal zone is here, and that's marked by, on the image, by a little arrow, which you can move up and down the screen, and that would move the focal zone up or down. So I'm just imagining that we've got 2 lesions, 2 dots within the animal here, and we've got them basically at the focal zone. So that's where we're going to get the best resolution. They're perpendicular to the beam, and that's where we'll see the 2 dots clearly demonstrated on the screen. So where frequency can improve axial resolution along the beam, this is perpendicular to the beam. Likewise, if we have something we're interested in which is below the focal zone, so here we can see the focal zone is marked here, level with the focal zone here, where the beam is narrowest. But if we have, in particular, if we have something we're looking at which is below the focal zone, excuse me, then we're really going to struggle because they fall within the thickness of the beam, and it's going to appear as 1 dot here. We're going to lose that image quality and resolution there. So let's have a look at how to find those buttons, focal zone, on your ultrasound machine. So here, so in summary, those 5 key buttons. The first one I want you to find is the overall gain. And remember, this uniformly amplifies all returning echoes, so essentially will make your image appear brighter or darker, but it is amplifying the information that's actually coming back from the probe. The second set of buttons I want you to find is the time gain compensation. So remember, that's your sliders, or you might have a near field and far field button. And these equalise the amplification from deeper structures, and we want to aim for a uniform image at all depths. Your third button is the frequency button, and this improves your axial resolution. So you always want the highest frequency that your depth will allow. The higher the frequency, the less deep you can go, essentially. So you want to adjust your depth, which is the fourth button. This shows you how shallow or how deep into the animal your image is. And you want to aim for your depth to be 3/4 to 2/3 of the image, and then adjust your frequency to the highest possible for that depth, where you're still getting a good image at the bottom of your good quality image at the bottom of your image. The fifth button is your focal zone, and this is the narrowest part of the sound beam with the best lateral resolution. You want to place your focal zone, so you'll know where your focal zone is because that corresponds to an arrow on the side of your image. You want to place that focal zone at a small organ of interest or at the bottom of a large organ of interest. So say, for example, you're looking at an adrenal gland, you want that focal zone on the adrenal gland. If, however, you're looking at the liver, you want to place that focal zone at the bottom of the liver, so at the bottom of the diaphragm, so that anything below that is much poorer quality image. So this brings us on to our final problem, or final barrier to learning ultrasound, which is training. So I speak to a lot of students and trying to figure out what the barriers to getting training are. Number one is cost. Ultrasound courses are often quite expensive. They're often in person, so and restricted how many people can go on them. So they book up quite quickly. So that's definitely an issue with training. You will often go on these courses and learn on a machine which is different to your own machine. So although you might learn lots on the course, it's difficult to then come back to your own machine and then figure out how to apply that knowledge to your own machine. And then also a lack of ongoing support. So often it'll be a set period of time, whether that's one day or even a slightly longer online course, but you will struggle to find that ongoing support that you need, because it is a difficult skill you can't learn in one day. You do need support and to be able to ask questions over a much longer period of time to be able to learn this as a skill. So what's the solutions? Well, courses. There are lots of courses out there, online or in person. FOVU offers both, so we have online courses for if you're learning the basics, or if you're a little bit more advanced and you want to learn the trickier bits. But one of the key things that I focus on in my courses are that I want you up and running on your own machine. So if there's something you can't figure out on your machine, then I will help to figure that out with you. In-person training, so there are lots of centres all over the country, in the UK, but I'm sure all over the world, where you can go in person, have 3 or 4 people to an ultrasound machine and a dog, and have an instructor to help you adjust your positioning and give you tips on what you can do to scan different organs. So they're really useful doing in-person teaching. FOVU also offers that, but rather than gathering lots of you in one place and using a different machine to your own, what I prefer to do is come to your own practice, have a look at your own machine and figure out how you're going to use that in your practice, and get you teach you on your own machine, so you know where all the buttons are, and you can take it from there. Finding a mentor is a really good idea. So if you've got someone in your practice who is already good at ultrasound, figure out whether you can make some sort of mentorship. So that might involve training sessions, or just discussing cases every so often, discussing images, and really having someone there in your practice can really help progress your skills quite a lot. To sort of emulate this, I am developing the FOVU Club, which is a membership site where there'll be monthly content delivered, and we have an online community as well, which where we can discuss cases and really help each other out. You can take videos and upload them, and we can discuss what you can improve, and it can help out in specific cases also. So, in summary, thank you for watching this webinar. I hope you have gained some solutions to gaining ultrasound skills when it comes to overcoming your barriers on finding time, so making it easy and making it a habit and scheduling in time. When it comes to working on your self-belief, so try and catch yourself when you hear yourself saying those negative things. Really take on that growth mindset rather than having fixed beliefs about who you are and what you can achieve. I hope with when it comes to looking at your machine, you'll take a new fresh look at your machine and think about what is possible with it, and particularly go and find those 5 buttons, those 5 key buttons: your time gain compensation and your overall gain, your frequency and depth, and your focal zone. Have a look for those buttons, and like I said before, if you can't find them, you're struggling to find them, then do get in touch. My email is camilla@fovu.co.uk, and I'll be more than happy to help you find those buttons on your machine. Let me know your make and model and what button it is that you can't find. And when it comes to training, thinking about different courses that you could go on, whether that's online or in person, and thinking about mentorship, so getting that ongoing support somehow. How are you going to get that? So thank you so much for listening to this webinar. I've really enjoyed delivering it for you. I just want to make you aware of where you can get more help. So at the website www.fovu.co.uk, there you can find all about my ultrasound machine reviews. There's a little quiz that you can take to match you up with your the best ultrasound machine out there for you. There's also all the information on courses. You can sign up to the newsletter, which often has great ultrasound information in it, and any up and coming free webinars, courses that are coming up, so it's well worth staying in touch for. Also, you can find out on the website about my ultrasound courses, so my online courses or my in-person teaching that I also deliver. You can also, if you are a scanning practice for me and you're signed up, for that. You can book my scans, my scanning time on that website under book a scan. If this webinar has left you with any questions, do drop me an email. I'll be happy to answer your queries and questions. My email is camilla@fovu.co.uk. I have really enjoyed delivering this webinar for you, and I really look forward to seeing more of you and hearing more from you, hearing your questions, so I know what I can create new webinars on that will help you in the future. So I will see you all soon.